the 3 o'clock hour. So I want to go ahead and just welcome everyone for coming to our meeting. I know what it's like for families to get anywhere at the bottom hour of a Friday, so we will be very mindful of your time. Our group is called We the People, by the People, for all the people. And our mission in our group is to unite families in every county by fostering personal connections with our local legislators through the sharing of our very compelling personal stories. This meeting is weekly throughout session. We meet every single Friday on Zoom at 3 o'clock. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Normally, we open with updates and what's happening in session, but today we're going to shift from our usual format for a really important reason. Before we get to that, I want to let everyone know that this meeting is recorded and we put this on our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/, for all the people Florida, we record all our meetings because families are busy, and this is an opportunity for families to watch and listen when they're able to tune in. So for today's topic, many of you know that there is a bill, House Bill 1103 or Senate Bill 1050, moving through the legislature this session. And the bill has a couple different sections in it. One of them is to uh, relaunch the IDD Managed Care Model pilot in the state. And it's a huge shift. So we know that families have a lot of questions and concerns, and today we have a special guest. Carol Gormley is the Vice President of Government Affairs for Independent Living Systems, which is the parent company to Florida Community Care, and they have the leading state, the contract for our IDD Managed Care pilot. Carol has been here for a minute in health policy. She has worked directly with Governor Jeb Bush and in the Florida Senate. And we really appreciate her coming and joining and speaking directly with families. So I want to be upfront to everyone on the call. Many of the families in this group have some really serious concerns about managed care for our population. So with that said, today's goals really are to listen, to learn, and to ask some thoughtful questions. So here's how it's going to go. We'll begin. We have a few pre-submitted questions we've already spoken with Carol, and then we want to open the floor for some live Q&A. So if you have questions, we would like you to drop your questions in the chat, and Nicole will go ahead and help Carol out as those questions come in. But with that, no, Carol, are you on the line still?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't
Okay.
see you.
You can't see me? And
Oh, wait, now I can see you.
there
Okay.
we go. Oh, my right ear. Here we go.
We'll let you take it from here, introduce yourself, and
All right. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you all for being here and taking the time to talk about this important topic. And I want to start by acknowledging what Stephanie described as the unifying theme that brings all of you together, and that is that you have compelling stories and personal experiences in dealing with the challenges of trying to take care of yourselves or a family member with special needs. And so I want to just acknowledge how much respect and just awe that I hold for you. And it comes from a place of having some amount of personal experience myself. My grandson had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and we coped for many years in trying to get him the services that he needed. So I share that theme with you. I also invited a colleague of mine, Callie Wilson, who many of you may already know, and she is the program director for the IDD pilot program that is being operated by Florida Community Care. And she also is the mother of two kids with special needs. So I appreciate her both for her professional knowledge and experience as well as her personal insights. So I know we don't have a lot of time to go through a very complex and important subject. So let me jump right in. And I did bring a few slides, not very many. I don't want to dominate them with slides, but maybe is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yeah, you can turn that on, right, Steph?
She should be able to. Is it
Is that
working? If you hit in the bottom
The
middle,
share.
Oh,
Mhm.
gotcha. Oh, perfect.
Here it's starting.
Okay.
Here we are.
All right. I want to get that out of the way. There we go. Okay. Again, Florida Community Care is a Florida-based company, provider, service network. That means that we first and foremost deliver services, direct services to individuals. And we started over 20 years ago as Independent Living Systems, which is our parent corporation, and focusing on elders and persons with disabilities and trying to provide them the home and community-based services they need to maintain their independence and their quality of life. So we feel very fortunate to have been selected through a competitive procurement to be the plan that implements this pilot project for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And just a brief background, 2023, they did so partly because they had seen some success in the long-term care world. And I threw this slide in there because it speaks to the first question that Stephanie shared with me before the meeting started. And that is, how will FCC deliver services in the community and prevent institutionalization? And so that's a very big question and with a very big answer, but I wanted to start by showing you that we have some experience and some success in doing this with the long-term care population. And when Florida started its managed long-term care program, this slide indicates that the majority of people being served with that program were in nursing homes and other institutional placements. And a specific goal of the managed care program was to rebalance that and put an emphasis on the delivery of home and community-based services. And the program as a whole, and FCC was a contributor to this, but not the only contributor to this, is that we've effectively rebalanced that program. And as a result, we are now serving almost 60% of the long-term care enrollees are served in home and community-based settings, and less than 40% of them are served in nursing homes or other institutional placements. So we effectively rebalanced it. And the value of that for the state of Florida as a whole is that we were able to increase the enrollment in long-term care services from 48,000 in 2014 to now we're serving about 144,000 people. So that's just a little bit of background of why even try this pilot, why experiment in this fashion. And I think people in the Capitol are frustrated and somewhat confounded by their inability to deliver services to people on the wait list for the IDD population. And frankly, they've invested a lot of money, over $200 million over a 5-year period. And the net gain in the enrollment in the iBudget waiver has been less than 2,000 people. So they're frustrated at how they get services for the other 25,000 people that are waiting for services right now. And this pilot program is intended to do that. Just real quickly right now, we serve 2 regions in the state that are shown on this map in the orange. Also, in order to be eligible for the program, the individual has to be on the wait list or the pre-enrollment list, as APD calls it, be 18 years of age or older, and reside in these areas. The pilot program went live October 1 of 2024. And this slide shows what the enrollment is. The top line and the blue dots show you how many forms APD received back from families indicating they might be interested in enrollment, because it's very important to note enrollment is voluntary. So APD sent out letters to 2,700 people in the 2 regions that are covered by the pilot area, explained the availability of the pilot as well as the availability of some additional slots for the iBudget waiver, and asked people if they were interested. The blue dots show the interest forms that were sent back indicating an interest in participating in the managed care pilot. And the lower line is actual enrollment in the pilot. So that's dependent on a number of factors, and I can talk about that if anyone's interested in it, but I just wanted to show you kind of what was the interest, kind of what was the response to the request for interest. And at this point, I want to take a moment and explain something really important, because we didn't implement this pilot in a vacuum. Other things were going on in the world of Medicaid, and particularly Medicaid managed care, that have gotten kind of tangled up with the implementation of the pilot. So one of those things is that the Agency for Healthcare Administration is told by state law that certain populations are voluntary for managed care enrollment. And one of those populations is any individual with intellectual or developmental disabilities. But they decided to change their interpretation of voluntary with the new contract period, and they moved it from always before it was an opt-in. So you had to stand up and raise your hand and say, I want to be in managed care. And they changed it to an opt-out. That it is in fact affecting a lot of families. And I understand a lot of people are upset about that. And by the way, I expect there to be some legislative action to address that this session, but we can talk about that later. But I just want to start out by distinguishing the fact that that is not a characteristic of the pilot. The pilot, you definitely have to stand up, raise your hand, say, I live in this area, I'm qualified, I want to participate. And that's the only way you get through the first set of hoops and potentially join the pilot. So back to the first question that you asked, Stephanie, prior to the meeting, is how will FCC deliver home and community-based services and prevent institutionalization? And so that's really an important question, and it's something we're intensely focused on because we believe in rebalancing, and we do it through a variety of things. And I would just emphasize maybe 4 aspects of the way in which our system of care operates. One is we are constantly recruiting providers. You can't keep people in the community if you don't have providers to go deliver the services that they need to stay independent in their home or in a community setting. If you don't have those providers, then by default, you end up with someone who needs care and can only get it in an institutional setting. So we are always recruiting providers who can visit homes, provide intermittent or attendant nursing services, personal care, home delivered meals, just the whole gamut of home and community-based services that enable somebody to stay at home. Secondly, our benefit package covers that variety of services. So we have a lot of different ways of offering support to families. Again, through home health services, personal care workers, companion services, respite services, and all of those kinds of things. We understand that it's not like there's like one switch and you flick that switch and then somebody's able to stay home. They need a whole care plan that identifies what their needs are and what supports will enable them to stay independent. But that care planning process is always focused on that individual, that family, what they need, and what will enable them to achieve their goals of independence and quality of life. So you also asked a second question. I'm sorry, this slide that I'm showing you now is just showing the growth of enrollment that happened since October. Again, we went live October 1. We have been hovering right around 350 or so enrollees for the last month or so for a variety of bureaucratic reasons, but so we're still pretty small footprint in the world. And here's the utilization of services, and it's probably hard for you to read the labels on this slide. Make it a little bit bigger, and I'll also offer to share these slides with Stephanie afterwards so she can use them to share with whoever is attending today's meeting. This is showing you most of the covered services, and let me start by clarifying that the numbers on these columns that's showing utilizations, this is based on what we're calling active authorizations. So it's not unduplicated individuals, and it's not units of services. Because you could authorize 5 units of services, or you could offer a weekly cadence of set of services or something like that. So it's active authorizations, but it does give you some idea of the display of services. That tallest column is what we call our expanded benefits. This is something that is kind of unique to Florida's managed care program, but as part of the procurement process, we offer to cover additional benefits that aren't included in the required benefit package of the state and aren't paid for by the state. There are extras that we offer up as part of that competitive procurement process. We can talk more later about what's in there, but that looks like the highest amount of utilization just because it's the easiest sometimes to get out the door. And remember, I said we went live October 1st, and one of the expanded benefits is like a gift card for a grocery basket. And we were going into the holidays, and a lot of people wanted that. We handed that out to everybody, so the utilization spiked on that. But these other things, I think more importantly, what is needed most are adult day training. That's the column that is labeled 137 authorizations had been active as of this point. And supplies and DME kind of and consumable supplies is another high utilizer. Personal care and companion services. So that it's very preliminary, and it's not the in-depth analysis of utilization that you're eventually going to want to see from us, but that takes a while to be able to get to that point where you can present reliable data along those lines, because you have to authorize the service, deliver the service, the claim has to be submitted, you pay for the claim, and then you report the service is actually used. So there's a lag time on that. We'll get to that, but this at least gives you kind of an opening idea of what people are asking for more often. If you have more questions about that, then also having Callie on the line, she'll be able to talk a little bit more about that as well. And the last slide I'll show you, and then I'll be quiet unless you, oh, you had a couple of other prepared questions. I'll get to those. But to explain that expanded benefit category a little bit more, and this is not all of them, but this is a lot of them. And particularly it's the ones that we've offered early on in the program. They're just little extra things that we give to our enrollees. Again, the grocery card we talked about already, but we've also given various gym memberships. We have a benefit so that we provide a stipend for a family to use in getting a legal guardianship set up. There's a dental desensitization kit that might help with some individuals as they attempt to get dental care, and a variety of things. So I just wanted to be able to show you all of that as a starting point. So I will finish up by responding to your third question, was about if I knew how much profit might have been made in other states using a managed care model. I can't answer that specific question because I don't know the data from other states. There are other states that are using managed care models, but I would say these things. Florida's approach to managed care is different. And particularly what's different in this pilot is the integration of medical coverage, long-term care coverage, and specialized IDD services. And the fact that all three of those benefit categories are covered in this pilot will create a different scenario for Florida's managed care approach. But importantly, to your question about profit, Florida statutes strictly limit the amount of profit that a managed care organization can make. There is an incentive to try to make some profit because we want people to be in there trying to innovate and find more creative ways to deliver services that people need. The accountability is on the side of watching what services are actually delivered, but the ultimate cap on profit in the managed care system in Florida is 7.5%. You can earn all of the profit you earn up to 5% net gain, and you can earn and keep half of the next 5% you earn. So that's a total of 7.5% net profit on whatever your revenues are from the managed care program. That's an absolute statutory cap to that. You earn more than that, you have to pay it back to the state. And then the last question you asked was about consumer-directed care. At the moment, our contract doesn't allow us to offer a consumer-directed care option, but we have a similar program in long-term care. And the legislation that Stephanie talked about authorizes the agency to let that consumer-directed care option be incorporated into the pilot if that legislation becomes law. And there might be some differences between that version and the one that is operated in the iBudget world. If you're interested about that, we can talk about that more specifically later, but I want to be quiet for a while and let you all ask your questions and make your comments, and then we can have a conversation. So I hope that was helpful.
Was Carol, this is Tom Nurse, and along with Stephanie, I'm one of the original founders of this group. And I have some questions specifically. I appreciate you coming today. And I'm not opposed to the rollout of managed care for the 4.2 million people on the served by Medicaid in the state of Florida, but I have grave concerns about the differences between the managed care and, like, I was on the original committee that developed consumer-directed care. I'm on the quality assurance committee, and I'm very concerned about provider capacity in rural and underserved populations. And I'm concerned that the data of the authorized services is very different than the actual utilization, whether there's I keep hearing about a lack of provider availability, particularly on behavioral supports, personal supports. So my question is since statutorily under 409.972, the developmental disabilities community was to be opted out of this, how did we all get thrown back in?
So again, with pilot, making I'm going to stop sharing here. There we go. So I can look at you more directly. With the pilot, you're not being thrown in. I was trying to point that out earlier when I was talking about the agency's change. in their opt-in versus opt-out policy, that pertains to Medicaid's medical coverage. So if you are a family or you have an individual in your family who's dependent on Medicaid coverage to get medical visits paid for, doctor visits, hospital visits, all of that kind of normal medical care, the state of Florida offers you that through a managed care program. And as of February 2nd, the Agency for Healthcare Administration insisted that even the developmentally disabled population who are expressly voluntary in the statute will get automatically enrolled and have to call the call center and ask to be disenrolled. But that does not happen in the pilot. In the
Okay, so
pilot,
that has been corrected in the pilot, correct?
that mistake was not made in the pilot at all because of the difference in the implementation. And I do
Some of us are
believe
not sure it's a mistake as more as it was an intent.
it was an intent by somebody because they had to do things in
Yeah, they
order
did
to
it.
make it happen. But I again, Stephanie referred to my my background and I was working for the legislature when we wrote the statute that created the statewide managed care program. We expressly made the developmentally disabled population voluntary, and by that we meant truly voluntary. That is, you get to stand up and say, I want to do this. The agencies decided to interpret it differently. And I wouldn't be surprised if the legislature corrects their interpretation in this session.
So with that in mind, one of the big challenges that we particularly see with children is that the forced impoverishment of families to qualify economically for Medicaid waivers and Medicaid funding is waived under the Home and Community-Based Services APD waiver, and it does not do that here. Why?
So I believe that it does do that, but again, we're dependent on the way in which agencies choose to implement the policy. But because the pilot is structured as a component of the statewide managed care program, and because eligibility is tied to your Medicaid eligibility for the iBudget home and community-based service waiver, then I think those same eligibility characteristics follow the individual into the pilot. But I can't swear to you that that's the way the agency is interpreting it on a case-by-case basis.
And the good news is the agency can be interpreted with the court's assistance on occasion, and that's why we have the waiver in the first place. You know, I think that trying to figure out how to manage one of the most expensive parts of our state government, it is important to look at that. But the challenge of the reason for the carve out is the complex and diverse needs of developmentally disabled doesn't fit. So if you can show specifically in the language where that carve out of family income is part of this program, I think that would go very far for many people seeing that potentially as a good thing, because I have clients that I consult with that I've been on currently are on statewide Medicaid managed care and are a family of four trapped at $41,000 a year with a $2,500 a month mortgage. Just doesn't, the math just doesn't work. So that's a big piece of that is it seems that, and I'm talking about a family's got a 5-year-old. So they're talking about 13 more years of poverty. So if that part can be clearly indicated, articulated, and emphasized, that would go far in doing that. The other major thing was trust. When, you know, this was supposed to be a pilot, but in this year's legislature, it's not a pilot, it's a statewide rollout. And the concern is where's the data of a pilot to demonstrate the merit to roll it out statewide? We haven't seen it.
So I guess I would be interested to know what is the specific data that you think needs to be presented before that judgment can be made.
I would like to see things like authorized levels of services versus actual utilization. I'd like to see in the pilot, are you returning money back to the state? Because if you don't use it and it comes back to the state, they're participating in the profit making of an organization rather than the challenge is that Medicaid for children has been protected by early periodic screening, diagnostics, and treatment that said if you need it, if it's medically necessary, you get it. We've been trying to work around the enforcement of that, and one of the challenges is if you have a Medicaid state plan, you're dealing with ACA and the state of Florida. When you have a managed care plan, you're working with the state that's working with the like community care, and then that's getting subcontracted out to providers. So the ability to actually enforce or hold accountable becomes dramatically more different. Can you address how that would be different in this pilot statewide?
So the pilot only allows adults to enroll. So although there might be a little bit of overlap of the EPSDT requirement because the pilot covers 18 and above, and I think EPSDT goes up to 21. So
Right.
maybe there's a slight overlap there. To the extent we are covering people under age 21 as part of our contract with the Agency for Healthcare Administration, we are monitored and held accountable for complying with EPSDT standards. So that requirement still pertains. I would argue that you have more accountability in a managed care, and I'm arguing the theory now, as opposed to any specific instance, in a managed care system, because at least you have one organization to go to and say, did you make this happen for your enrollees? Show us that you, in fact, provided services to enrollees. And we have timeliness requirements. We have medical loss ratio requirements. We have consistency with care plan. We have resolution of complaint requirements. And we are constantly reporting to ACA about all of those standards, all of those commitments, and they have the opportunity to punish us if we don't make it, as opposed to 15,000 individual providers who are submitting claims to the state. Who do you blame if somebody doesn't get in to see the doctor?
And so one of the challenges that I've run into on the statewide Medicaid managed care, not the pilot, but on the SMMC, is when you ask for a utilization report. We authorize this many services, but in fact we only did half of them. Is that I am finding consistently that the providers are not willing to provide that information. Yet that's one of the key elements of taking somebody that's on the wait list and the current program is unable to meet their needs to be able to go on the regular waiver, go on the fee for service and do that. So can you help us understand how that transparency would be more available? And, because reporting back to ACA is different than reporting back to the consumer who's actually the one that can speak.
Well, our contractual obligation is to report it to ACA, and I would hope that they would respond to any request for information about that. Now, that won't be specific to an individual consumer. That will be for our enrolled population, but they have encounter data, and what encounter data will show is not just the authorized services, but the paid claims. So that's based on services that were actually rendered and paid for by the managed care organization. And you should be able to request that. Again, it is not yet available for the pilot. We only went live in October. There's easily a normal 6-month lag in the claims processing and data collection process. So, but we will eventually be able to show you that.
And that's our concern. And one of the concerns we have is that the pilot data is lagging, but the decision to roll out statewide seems to be moving forward without the confirmation of data of effectiveness and efficiency. And the lack of full transparency of that data is concerning.
I understand the point you're making.
You know, and so
But I would just suggest that my understanding of the legislators' interest in expanding the pilot this soon is partly due to their impatience and frankly frustration with being able to deliver services effectively to people on the wait list. So they are anxiously looking for another way to get that done.
And Carol, since you were involved with, with Governor Bush, as I was too, when the class action lawsuit of Prado versus Bush was settled, the wait list was eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
The services were effectively delivered. There was a dramatic expansion of commuter capacity. I was involved in the development of consumer-directed care, and there was a utilization rate of the regular waiver of 92%. So there was, if you move to consumer-directed care under APD currently, there is an 8% reduction automatically to kind of have parity of that utilization. The big difference is 8% is 1 month's worth of funding. So if a service didn't happen for a month, that's an 8% loss of that particular service funding. And that reverts back. Under consumer-directed care, those, you may have a problem with getting somebody onboarding for a few months. What happens after the 8% automatic one, all the unutilized dollars revert back into savings to be utilized to expand beyond the Medicaid providers into maybe like, psychiatric care for a behaviorally complex person that can't get the kind of psychiatric care they need at a Medicaid rate, but can pay the going community rate through their savings. We're concerned that option of provider expansion beyond the traditional Medicaid, particularly along complex behavior and mental health, isn't available here. And we're concerned that the authorization versus utilization results in a reversion result in the reversion of a lot of money. And so how does that work with consumer-directed care in those rural and underserved populations where the provider capacity in Immokalee doesn't really exist? In Collier County, it hardly exists. How does this address that?
So we have a responsibility and a contractual obligation to see each enrollee within 5 days of their enrollment in our plan, to do a face-to-face comprehensive assessment and develop a care plan, a person-centered care plan. And we also have a contractual obligation for the services that are included in that care plan to begin within 7 days of the care plan being complete. So, and after that, we are reviewed constantly on whether or not the services we contemplate in the care plan are in fact being delivered to our enrolled population. So we are, that whole system of care will be monitored correctly. Now, what we do as a plan is, in anticipation of people from Immokalee voluntarily enrolling in this pilot, we are talking to providers in various places throughout the state and trying to be prepared for that moment in time in which we have somebody who needs that service and we can have a contracted provider to deliver the service they need. We also have another contractual obligation as part of the pilot that's called continuity of care. So even if somebody enrolls and they are already in a relationship with a provider and receiving some set of services with some other source of support, before that, we have an obligation for at least 120 days after that enrollment to continue that provider's services the same way they were getting before their enrollment, and to pay them at least the same rate they were getting before that. And then during that 120-day period, we're trying to talk them into contracting with us so we can continue delivering services. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal by which we can make it easier for providers to participate in the pilot and to serve these enrollees and these individuals. And we think we have more tools than are available to the state agency in the iBudget waiver program, just because we've got some flexibilities and we are you know, a little bit more nimble, frankly, than any state agency can be, just because of the nature of the organizational structure, to respond to new situations. So for instance, in the case of behavioral analysis services, we are actively working with the state association, the FABA organization, to try to develop mechanisms and support them in their efforts to increase the number of providers who can serve an adult population. So we're constantly looking at that. We had another situation where some providers who were used to working exclusively in iBudget world and interacting exclusively with APD as a payer did not have the tools at their disposal or the experience to file claims in our world, which are slightly different than APD world. And so we've started building a bridge that uses a system they're used to and translates it into our system so that their claim can be processed efficiently and they can get paid. In long-term care world, we've also used a mechanism where we advance pay providers so that they can sustain their financial viability while they are developing a population of people adequate to, you know, that they can go on and be a viable provider. So we just have a lot of tools at our disposal to make it work and to adapt how it works in various situations.
So Carol, my last question for now is the provider
Good,
rate.
because I was going to cut you off. We have
Yeah,
a
I know.
bunch
Well,
of
the
questions.
provider
Make it
rate
quick.
the same for APD as it is for the managed care pilot?
Are you asking about the provider rate?
Provider rates.
Okay. We are not bound to that. And so we have the flexibility to work out different payment structures. The state contract directly encourages us to enter into value-based payments with providers. But we are starting for the most part at contracting with providers in a way. We're building this through the pilot project, so we haven't been as innovative as we might be in the long run. But in the short term, we tend to offer around 110 to 120% of APD rates.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. He has been burning at the chaps to be on this call, but I know the chat's been very busy. So Nicole, you're our MC on this.
I'm gonna start at the beginning. So there's just a couple of questions. I'm gonna go back to the very first couple of messages that we had here. So here we go. Is it Elaine wanted to know, does this managed care program eliminate support coordinators?
There is still support coordination happening. It's slightly different in the pilot. We call it care coordination. It's the same function. So far in the pilot in just these two regions, we have done all of the care coordination through our employed care coordinators. we anticipate eventually also being able to contract with support coordinators who are very familiar and experienced with this population and have them perform that service as a contracted provider. But we just had to start by kind of learning the system ourselves first and then contemplate that. So the function is definitely continuing. It'll look slightly differently, but people who are working as support coordinators right now in the iBudget world may have an opportunity to also function in the managed care environment.
Okay. I'm going to move to Kim. She's asked, I think, a couple of times within the chat. So Kim, I'm going to just summarize here for a couple different questions. She's a provider, and basically she's looking to have you give maybe a little bit more information from that perspective, the application process, how they're paid, turnaround time for services, that kind of thing. If you could give, just a bit more information there.
Let me start with the onboarding process, and I'm going to give also a shout out to Callie to be on alert, so to back me up with more details. But as a starting process, so if you are a provider who is not yet in a contractual relationship with FCC, but you're interested in exploring that, you can go to our website, and maybe Callie can throw the link into the chat for you so you can get there, and there'll be a tab you can click on for providers, and there'll be an application to fill out that indicates that you're interested. What will happen after that is you'll get a call or a response back from our provider relations team, and we'll start to work with you. We'll share materials, what is the package of information we need to complete our credentialing process, and let you look at the contract, see if our standard contract, see if you have any concerns with any of those provisions. We'll start to talk to you about rates and what the potential is for placing people in your services and that kind of thing. We'll talk all that through and then hopefully get to a point where you agree that a version of our contract is acceptable to you and you become one of our providers. At that point, then the next thing that you would notice is that we'll offer you training in how to get information from our system about enrollees that we place with you to get services. You'll be able to use our eCare data system to look at what's going on. You do not have to be operating in iConnect in order to get that information. You can do it through our data system. And when you have provided a service, actually, let me back up. We'll also offer you opportunities to go through a training program, either online or I believe we even do some in-person training, so that you'll get used to how do I file a claim and how do I interact with the system and that kind of thing. And then again, Callie's been working on these options to make it easier. So if you've never interacted with a managed care plan before, you've been exclusively filing all your claims through iConnect to the iBudget world, hopefully we can build a bridge that works for you so that you don't have to like buy a whole new financial system in order to do that. You can interact through our world, file claims, and get paid. As far as getting paid, we try to pay you very quickly. I'm not sure I can tell you what our standard is yet, because we have been working on a few glitches as to what the coding is for certain specialized IDD systems versus the coding for long-term care services and things like that. Really technical stuff way beyond my capacity to understand. But we're trying to solve those problems as quickly as we can. And for the most part, I think we're paying within I want to say 7 days, but Callie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then if you have any complaint about any of that, if you don't think we paid you the right amount or paid you quickly enough, there's a complaint line you can call in. You can talk to our, again, our provider team, and we'll try to solve that problem.
Well, thank you, Carol. I also want to point out first a big thank you to Callie, because I've noticed in the chat that she likes to jump in and answer questions as she catches them. There's been a lot. So, first of all, Callie, thank you very, very much. And she's also shared her email. So for anyone that has questions, can make sure you write down her email address so that way you can, if you have something offline, because we're going to be coming to the end of our time here soon. So thank you, Callie, for that. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to do one more question and then we'll probably start to wrap it up. I had from Yolanda said that she would like you to talk a little bit more about therapies, the approval process, frequency, and duration. So if you could maybe expand on that just a little bit.
And so are we talking just strictly medical therapies or any aspect of what is in the care plan, or are we talking in like a consumer-directed care type option? Is
She
that?
didn't specify, but I wonder if that's not the way she was leaning with Yolanda, there you are. Did you mean more with which one were you preferring there? I think she's typing.
Oh, I can say, if I
Oh,
can
yes,
talk.
you are. There you are.
Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, behavior therapies too. That was the reference. The majority of our consumers do require that type of therapies.
Yeah.
Okay, so we would consider those as part of the medical benefits in our plan. And when the care coordinator comes and meets with a new enrollee, they would look at those kinds of medical needs as well as the IDD type services, specialized kind of iBudget services. And the care plan then would serve as the authorization for utilization of those services. Now, if you need a reference to a specific providers, we'll have a list of those that we can start you with. But if you're already interacting with some therapists and you want to continue, we will use that continuity of care period that I talked about before, so that you can just continue the service that you're getting, and we'll reach out to your providers and see if we can't negotiate a contract with them so that they would be available to you for the long term. But we will definitely cover that service. And I want to use this opportunity to make the point, in this pilot, what guides the services that are available to somebody is the care plan. It is not a dollar amount. In iBudget world, you're always working against a dollar amount. It is that iBudget amount that is given to you as a result of, the algorithm and your cost plan. It's all driven towards a dollar amount. In our case, we manage the money in an aggregate fashion for our total enrolled population. On an individual level, we are only focusing on what is the need, what is the service that needs to be provided, where can we get that service, how can we deliver that service. It's care plan driven.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. If you guys are okay with it, we're going to introduce Callie real quick so she can say a quick hello before we wrap up.
Sure. Well, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. And Carol and everybody else. So real quick, just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Callie. I am the IDD program pilot director here with Florida Community Care. But really quickly, I just wanted to also say that my background is all with the IDD services. So I was a provider for 8 years. I was with the ARC Tampa Bay here in Pinellas County. Started as the IDD behavior intensive nurse. And then I worked my way up to associate executive director over residential programming as well as the medical services there. And in addition, I've been on with Yolanda on the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council since 2018. More than that, though, I'm a parent. As Carol mentioned, I have 3 children. 2 of them currently have intellectual developmental disabilities. One of them is actually currently being served under the iBudget waiver. She moved into a group home last year. She's currently served thankfully at one of the group homes that I used to oversee. So I'm very happy with the services that she's receiving. My other daughter has a genetic condition called Turner syndrome, and she is currently on the pre-enrollment wait list. What I will say as a parent and advocate is that You'll never hear me say I'm not grateful for APD. They provide the services for my daughter. But I also know that we can do better. And what I am loving about Florida Community Care and the mindset that they're in is we are constantly, Carol and I are constantly in these meetings. We've been on Florida Empower. We were at the Family Cafe last year. We are the biggest sponsor this year for Family Cafe. We are at every advocacy days for the ARC. We want to hear from you all because we want to make sure that you all have a voice in making this successful and what it needs to be. 10 years ago, when I was a provider, there was discussion about managed care. It was coming down the pipeline. 20 years ago, we knew it was happening. So what I can appreciate is here we are, and we want to continue to have these open door discussions with families, because I can fairly much guarantee that if this was a Humana, an Aetna, something along those lines, Carol and I wouldn't be here. And so we want to make this what it needs to be for our kids, for our families. And I can't emphasize enough. I put my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. I may not be able to get back to you immediately, but I certainly have the intent to get with you. If you're at Family Cafe this year, please come introduce yourself. Again, we want to have these open door meetings so that we can hear from you. So please, please, please invite us anytime.
Well, we may take you up on that because I think there was still a ton of questions that didn't get answered. So I'm sorry that we're constricted by time. I know a lot of us are going to be getting ready to jump into Joe McCann's Let's Chat. Chip has the best t-shirt in the meeting today for that. So, Stephanie, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I just really want to thank you both for being here today. And we'd love to have you back to continue the conversation. And to all the families on the call today, if you do have concerns, utilize these two women. Keep asking the questions. We want to make sure that we're at the table. One of the things that I have pushed very, very, very hard for is for our family care councils to revitalize, and I'm happy to see that that's also in that bill. My concern is if this pilot goes well and it gets implemented, that's a lot of work we've put into these family care councils. 30 years, want to see that happen in this optional program as well. But I want to thank you all for being here. I want to remind you that we are here every Friday at 3 o'clock throughout session. And I put in the chat our links to our YouTube page and our Facebook page, website pending. And to remind everybody here on the group, like, we're not an organization, we're not backed by an organization. We are family members. We are people who love people with IDD, and we want them to be included here in Florida. So with that, I'm going to let everybody have a chance to say goodbye, and we will see you next Friday.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Bye.